Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where frontline sales leaders teach you how to build and scale an outbound sales team. Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Collin Stewart, and today I'm joined by Shawn Cease, Shawn Cease Fire, Director of SDR Client Services at the Sales Developers. Shawn, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Collin. I've been watching the show for a long time. I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool, man. And tell me the quick story of your nickname, Ceasefire, that I just decided to give you.
Ceasefire. Okay, so the quick story on this was I was sharing a story with Collin here about how I am coachable, and that goes back to being a United States Marine in my early years, 18, 19, 20, 21. When I got to the rifle range during boot camp, the drill instructors made it abundantly clear that I was not to fire my rifle when they said cease fire. Needless to say, I spent about 3 weeks about getting killed, dying, thousands of push-ups, exercise to make sure that I did not shoot my rifle when they said cease fire. Long story short, turned out to be the platoon high shooter, shooting 235 out of 250 in the black. And that is my stamp or claim to fame on the fact that I am coachable.
Beautiful. So today we're not getting shooting lessons, but we're talking about calibrating. And I think it's one of the most important pieces when we're talking about cold calling is really calibrating your pitch to sort of how the buyer wants to be communicated with, right? Like, I think that's one of the things that's going to be almost impossible for a computer or a machine to replace, whether it's, through voice or through text, is just sort of that, that natural intonation, that natural sensing, their natural style. And so I'm curious, where did your ideas on the subject come from?
So the idea of talking to people the way that they like to be talked to, or communicating with people the way they like to be communicated with, or the simplest way to say it is selling to people the way they like to be sold to. I think that there's a lot of talk and a lot of research where people talk about how you talk to people. In other words, your intonation, your modulation, your volume. And it's always about how you're coming across to the customer or your client or prospect. And when I ran into Navigate 2.0, I saw it as a way of taking that to a whole nother level. In other words, it's not about how I talk, it's about me listening to how they're talking. Actually, the words that they're saying to me directly can really give me some clues as to how I should approach them or communicate with them. And there's a lot of cues that go along with doing that. So it's kind of the reversal. Everyone always says, listen to your customer, respond to your customer. And this is kind of taking that, use the right volume, modulation, intonation, and you'll get further. It's a sales skill. Well, this is a really, 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 I wouldn't say advanced sales skill, but it should be a fundamental one, talking to people the way that they want to be talked to, and you end up getting a little bit further with them.
Perfect. And this is from a book called Navigate 2.0, right?
Yeah, Navigate 2.0, selling the way people like to buy.
Cool. So what made this resonate with you?
Well, it came to me by way of Southwestern Consulting, and they're actually who I decided to use last year as a sales coach. I kind of shopped around for a sales coach and decided on Southwestern. I really decided that I wanted to up-level my skills with the way everything is changing, right? Whether it's automation or robots or do it this way, do it that way. I thought, it's really hard to get sound advice from anyone because you get a lot of people saying the same thing over and over, and it's an echo chamber. And Navigate 2.0 came my way by way of signing up with Southwestern Consulting when I said, here's specifically what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get better at opening doors because I think that that's really the future. I think that so many things can and will be automated. Like you said earlier, it's going to go back to being able to open up doors and have first conversations with people, and then they'll kind of make their way down the pipeline and down the funnel, probably being touched by automation here, there, all the way to the extent of swipe your credit card or walk by with your phone, and who cares about the AI? Forgive me, AEs, but not who cares about AEs, but a lot of ways to pay for stuff these days, right? You can snap your fingers, boom, paid. Don't even have to think about it, So it was about opening doors is really what got me thinking more and more about this module and this technique.
Awesome. And so opening doors, and specifically around cold calling, right?
Yeah, 100% around cold calling, even to the extent of people getting excited about all of the different tools and stacks you can have for SDRs. Sometimes, you probably know as well as I do, the more dials you make, the more conversations you have, the more appointments you set. And then every step along the way, the better the data, the more consistent the calls, the better the script, better the ability to have a conversation with someone, the more meetings get booked. So you can have every tool in the world, right? You can name a few: Salesforce, Outreach, SalesLoft, Bring DNA, all of them, and even what's the other one? Grading or scoring prospects. Oh, 3, 6, 9, 10. This is a hot lead. I think I've heard that on your show before, and it's kind of silly. It's like, okay, this one is it's a hot lead. Well, what happened when you talk to him? Well, no one's talked to him.
And it's
Yeah.
hot. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's hot. It's 16. The hot leads. I've got a hot lead. This is 16.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I could talk about lead scoring all day long. I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of, like, you know what? Who cares? Let's just get them on the phone. If somebody, if somebody said, hey, contact me, let's get but again,
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with the thousands of inbound leads that I know some of our listeners might be, or some of our listeners' companies might be. So
Yeah.
cool. So talk to me about, like, I'm super interested here because I know the principle of mirroring, is super important, but I feel like this goes beyond just mirroring and paraphrasing and all that, all the things we learned from Dr. Cialdini. So talk to me about, what are some of the ways that people like to be talked to?
Well, so in this particular model, it comes down to 4 different personalities, and I've got a cheat sheet here because I don't have every single thing memorized. This is probably a lifelong skill, but the 4 main personalities are a fighter, an entertainer, a counselor, and a detective. Now, one of the things that really, really makes it work, and I'll say this early, is actually having yourself assessed. So as part of the process, you actually go through an assessment to find out what your style is. And my style happens to be, my natural selling style is fighter and detective, which means that I'm pretty much really matter of fact. I like to get to it quick, and it's something that I really have to work on because I have to work on remembering to serve people more than just saying, hey, let's do this. It makes perfect sense to me. Why doesn't it make sense to you? Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And so the great thing is as soon as you do know what your style is, you get a big report on ways that you need to behave or can practice behaving with different styles so that you can actually communicate more effectively. And that's probably the best first step you can take towards this whole entire module or process working for you.
Great. And so talk to me about, let's start with the fighter. Let's just give me some high level details, because you said you're part fighter, part detective. So why don't we start with that one, and then we'll go to the other ones.
Yeah. So across the board, there's the fighter, the entertainer, and the counselor and the detective. And
Yeah.
we'll just talk about them individually here. The most interesting part is they have it boiled down to 4 key words. In other words, what you're going to hear from a fighter mostly is what. What is this about? So if you we'll go on to the other 4 real quick. Entertainer, who is this? Who are you? Who is this? Counselor, how'd you get my number? How what's happening next year? How are we doing this? And detectives are more like, why? Why is this important? Why do I care? And so those are probably the fastest way to figure out who you're talking to. And again, it takes a lot of practice and studying and to remember this. But they all have different traits too. Like the fighter, like I said, they're controlling, demanding, quick-tempered. So we give you the example, right? If I call you up and you said what, so let's do that. Hey, Collin, this is Shawn from the Sales Developers.
Hey, Shawn.
Hey, the reason. Hey, Shawn. I was expecting you to say, what is this about?
What is this about?
So, hey, Collin, the reason for my call today is to get some time on your calendar to show you exactly how we can help you guys fill the funnel faster. Now, I'm just going to stop right there. And so when someone says what, it basically means get to the point. Tell them exactly why you're calling, the reason you're calling, get straight to it. Versus, an entertainer, when someone says, for example, someone says who, people hear this all the time, probably. You call up somebody and someone will say, who are you? Who is this? What's the name of your company?
Yeah.
And these are that would kind of give you a clue that it's an entertainer, and having the cheat sheet here, your script ready to go for that for that person. That they're extroverted, they're enthusiastic, and they kind of make decisions based on emotion. So whenever I am mindful enough to remember, someone says, "Who is this?" He said, "Hey, this is Shawn Cease over at the Sales Developers, and we're known for our world-class outbound sales, building the funnel. And I know you guys over there at Predictable Revenue are super, super proud of what you guys are doing. What are you guys working on over there today?" To get the entertainer to talk more about what they're doing. They want to build a little bit of rapport, talk about some exciting things, other things about the topic at hand before you move them into that. So when they're saying, who, now you move into a counselor, for example, they're going to want to know, how does this benefit me? And they're usually there's even tone. They're lower volume, slower speed. Hey, yeah, Collin, this is Shawn. How can I help you? How can I help you? This is more of your counselor. Um, and these people are very cautious and usually are very tied to their team. They do things in groups, so it makes a lot of sense to do something like this. Hey, Collin, this is Shawn from the Sales Developers.
How can I help you?
Well, the reason why I was calling you is I wanted to talk to you about getting a little bit of time on your calendar so that we can show you and everybody on your team how we can help you build more pipeline by having better contacts, better scripts, and things like that. When do you have some time available in the next 2 weeks for you and your team to join us for a meeting?
And so in this case, you're actually wrapping in you're saying, because you're a counselor, I'm going to assume you're going to want to bring other people into the fold here.
Yeah, the counselor won't do anything by themselves, right? They won't do anything with they desire consistency. They're used to status quo. So you're going to want to give them a chance to bring their team in. And in a lot of teams, a lot of times that ends with, let me talk to my team. So you're prepared for that. You have a nice email, a nice follow-up, cadence to go with them to continue. Or, hey, you know what? I know it sounds like you need to talk to your team. That makes a lot of sense. Let me go ahead and do my job. Let me get the names of your other team members, and I'll include them on the email. That way you don't have to do the work. It'll be easier for you. I'll get that all done for you right now.
Yeah.
And start gathering up more data. And, okay. And then, of course, there's the detective. The detective is brass tacks. Why is this important? Detail-oriented, analytical, unemotional, just straight to the point. They're usually a low volume but a faster speed.
Yep.
And you call up a detective, they're going to ask you, why is this important? Why do I care? Or why should I change? Or I'm all set. I'm good to go. I don't even know why this matters to me. And the answer there. Hey, Collin, this is Shawn over at the Sales Developers. How you doing this afternoon?
Yeah, I'm good. Don't need what you got.
Yeah, I bet you don't. No, so the reply to that is, hey, every
sorry,
time.
no, I'll give you a good one. Come on.
Yeah.
Let me ask. Sorry, let me try it again.
No problem. We're going to do this back and forth, right? Hey, Collin, this is Shawn over at the Sales Developers. How you doing this afternoon?
Good. Why are you calling me?
Well, hey, there's a pretty simple reason why I was giving you a call here today, Collin. I'm calling you from the Sales Developers, and we specialize in increasing the number of leads that you and your team can get to turn into sales qualified leads by a minimum of 25% in the first 3 months. And so really the reason for my call today was to get a time on your calendar where we can show you exactly how that worked for T-Mobile and AT&T and IBM. Do you have your calendar available?
Sounds good.
Yeah. And so the point there was the detective needs to know, hey, we increased by 25%. We improved the dial to connect rate by 10% by improving the data. And as a result of that, I can actually show you some real examples that we have from AT&T and T-Mobile and IBM to prove that to you. So we'll get all that together next week at 5 o'clock or 2 o'clock on Wednesday. Does that work for you? So those are some examples of how you kind of work through that. And if you set up your scripts so that you're actually doing the things you know you're supposed to do, like pause, like, hey, this is Shawn Cease from the sales developers. I mean, you could even narrow it down to that, just to get somebody to prompt them for looking for the what, who, how, why, the tone, the volume, and so on, so that you can now proceed with the right script for what you think is the right personality.
Because it's so hard to detect, what style of prospect is. Well, it's impossible if you're the one that's talking, right?
Yeah,
So how do you tell, right? So I think that it sounds like your first step is intro, pause,
yeah.
and then just sort of let them wait for that response. See if you can learn a little bit of information. It's sort of like it's a gentle interrogation. I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, and I can tell you, going back to the concept of being coachable and how important process is, all the things, the great things you have on your show and people talk about. I actually stick to a very, very simple model, which is I call it most of the time. It's really when it gets more difficult. The more difficult it gets to call a particular niche, the less I start to say. In other words, I'll change my script to, "This is Shawn Cease from the sales developers." Period, to wait for someone to say, whatever it is they're going to say. And the next thing that I always say is I'll tell them exactly why I'm calling. The reason for my call is to get some time on your calendar, still trying to look for that little bite, that little piece of nugget. And it doesn't work every time. This isn't the golden ticket, right? I mean, it's the kind of thing where you have to be really mindful. And one thing that I found from my coach, and this is really, really valuable, is to realize, because they have a really good idea of who is where. And I don't want to be too general, but the reality is, when this was pointed out to me, when I said, "Hey, I'm having a problem here with my coach, I keep thinking that people are fighters and they're not." And he said, "Well, who are you calling?" And it turned out that I was calling directly, very high level, into Fortune 500. And he said, "Oh, that's the easy one. Let me show you some information that Fortune 500 has counselors and detectives at very high levels."
Hmm.
And so I was kind of loading up my thing, trying to hope that I could trying to be in my own fighting style, be a fighter too, and say, "All right, when you say what, I'm going to say the reason for my call is this." Boom, gotcha. And they're going to, and then give them some options, and they'll go one way or the other. So knowing, who you're actually going to call is super helpful too, and you can tailor your script around that. But I use that very, very simple method of introducing myself, saying, "This is the reason for my call," and paying close attention to the market that I'm calling into, to kind of give me a heads up for what I might be running into.
Gotcha. Because it's probably also not within within that initial intro. Obviously, that's the best place to learn it. But as you get deeper and deeper in the conversation, you're going to learn more and more. So
Yeah,
some other
I,
things you watch out for.
yeah. I think mostly what I watch out for is how people are reacting to me very early in the conversation, because as soon as we get past the point where we have an idea of who we're talking to, we really get into the pitch of it. So for me, it's everything that I'm doing is right there in the first 30, I should say 8 to 15 seconds for me. And we probably back up and qualify that a little bit, because I do SDR work, and I like to refer to it as high velocity SDR work. So we're really matter of fact about, hey, can we set up this appointment? And those calls are usually 2 minutes to 5 minutes, and we're in and out, and
Mhm.
have the appointment booked, or not, and set for a follow-up. And in setting the follow-ups and things like that, we'll make a note saying that this is a fighter or an entertainer or a counselor, so we have a better way, or know how we're going to address them or continue to talk to them as we go along, or go down the path to try to get an appointment. So I don't have the luxury of getting so far down the funnel with somebody into a big, long, pipeline deal, because I'm using this as my very, very first opening, to see if I can use it some way to just crack the code on having a better chance to have a conversation with them. And I find that it works right there in the beginning. The quieter I am, the more they tell me, by just introducing myself and stating the reason for my call.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember my grandparents saying, "You've got ears and a mouth, and they don't work at the same time." So,
Yeah.
so any
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead, Shawn.
Well, I was going to say that, just looking at all these different the traits here, there's a couple of things I think that would be helpful with the direction you were going there. When it comes to these different styles, for example, like the fighter, the entertainer, counselor, and detective, even when it comes to the approach, like the approach for a fighter, they like to jump right in with the reason you're calling, give value statements immediately. Entertainers, like I said, to begin with pleasantries. Hey, we're the best at this. What are you guys good at? And then counselors like to take it slow, casual manner, invite the team to the presentation. And then detectives, be specific to state your objective, be prepared to give details. And then it even goes on to, if you are going to be doing presentations, that if you know that you're addressing a fighter or an entertainer, so on, that the presentation is, be specific about the bottom line, change or challenge them positively, give them new ideas to think about in a positive way that are challenging. Entertainers, during a presentation, you got to be enthusiastic. Hey, this is going to be great. You guys are going to love it. You're not going to believe what you see. Like, oh yeah, hey, this sounds pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Counselors, you're going to provide a lot of detail. Again, counselors and detectives I kind of treat the same. That here's how we did it for them. There were all these other people that benefited from it. Here are the numbers. So you start to build this case of it. It works for, for other people. And I think that is pretty much how I do it. I actually kind of group the counselor and the detective together a little bit because they're sort of similar. And fighters and entertainers totally different. And what was I going to say? The one thing about fighters, and this has helped me out a ton. When you get somebody on the phone and they first start saying, "What is this about? What do you want?" The biggest takeaway that I've taken away from this whole thing is that fighters love choices. In other words, every time I've ever got into it with somebody who is being really, pushing back and is in the same style that I am, is I've been able to diffuse that by giving them decisions. In other words, if something as simple as this, somebody says, "What is this about?" Well, I was calling to get some time on your calendar so we could show you how this works. Does Tuesday at 2 work for you, or is later in the week better? In other words, giving somebody an option, giving them two options. And now, because what is the fighter, their biggest fear, the fighter's biggest fear, this will tie it together, is loss of control. They want to control the situation. So as soon as you're pushing them positively, like from an SDR perspective, trying to get the meeting, hey, I wanted to get some time on your calendar to show you this. Does Tuesday at 3 work for you, or is later in the week better for you? Now you've got them back to, again, for the golden nugget here, but it gives them an opportunity to decide if it works good for them or not. And that's probably one of the things that added a ton of benefit to the way that I'm doing my prospecting. Just having that little nugget was so wonderful.
That's super helpful. So can you talk to me maybe a bit about how you might change your pitch for, say, an entertainer, or at least change those like opening seconds?
Yeah. So again, you're trying to hear what people are saying to you, and I'm always looking for the key phrases, which are, for a fighter, what do you want? What is the price? How much does it cost? Just real matter of fact. The entertainer, who are you? Who are your other clients? And the entertainer is a great one, right? Because as soon as somebody says, "Who is this?" I'm going to go into how great and wonderful and mystical and magic crystal ball it is. Hey, we are the leaders in outbound sales development. We build the highest velocity pipelines ever known to mankind. And I know you guys are doing great work over there. There's no doubt about that. I mean, what do you guys got in the fire out there? I'm always seeing you on LinkedIn. I'm seeing you over here. I mean, what are you working on today? What's on your desk? What are you doing? And get an entertainer to yell, "Yeah, I'm glad. What did you see? I'm glad you saw that. Cool." And we're not talking about the product. We're talking to the entertainer the way that the entertainer wants to talk, because they said, "Who are you? Have I heard of you? I don't know who you are." Well, I'm pretty sure that the entertainer wants to tell me all about them. So I'm going to up the ante and say, "Hey, I'm the greatest thing there ever was. We're the sales developers. We build pipeline like there's no tomorrow. We're so proud of it. Tell me what you're working on today that you guys are proud of. What's going on over there? What are you guys doing? What's up?
That's cool.
You know, and that comes from the who are you? Having these cheat sheets here on your on your scripting software, and then going to the counselor too. The same thing. How does this benefit the company as a whole, or how will this compare with what we're currently using? In looking at the cheat sheet, low volume, slow speed. Hey, it sounds like you guys really take your time to make all of your decisions, get everything squared away, bring in the right people. So this is a great time for you and I to get the calendar out, find a time that works, and I'll be happy to include other members from your team on the invite so you don't have to do that. Why don't you go ahead and give me their email addresses? We'll find a time that works for everyone. Do you have any questions for me? And that all comes from, I'm not sure. That's how I always think of a counselor. They'll say, how does this benefit the company? And usually people don't say that. I usually get a sense of, I don't know, I think we're all set. I'm not too concerned about this. This isn't really a big deal for this, and then go back into a lot of your simple scripts of like, yeah, we talk to a lot of people, and we're always happy to hear what's working for everyone, because I know you spent a lot of time with your team working on polishing processes, making sure everything works. And it's a challenge to just come in and out of the blue, hey, let's put a meeting together and change everything. So if I can find a time that works for you next week that you and a couple members of your team can see how we've helped these guys over here, maybe from there we can decide if there's a plan we can put together, or maybe go our separate ways. I'll let you guys decide as a group what makes sense for you. That sort of thing.
That's great. And so finally, the detective. So
the detective.
How do you change your pitch for the detective?
So the detective, I always, in my mind, what I try to remember are pictures of spreadsheets and graphs, right? Just as a visual, like a detective. So I think, okay, think spreadsheet graphs. What does that mean? That means percentages and outcomes. And you got to have that on the ready, on a piece of paper or in your scripting or somewhere. We've helped teams improve, their pipeline velocity by 30%. Or what are the real levers? We talk about levers. Deal size. We could talk to you about how we can increase your deal size by targeting the right people. If we get the right people into the pipeline, the deal size will go up. We'll get more of those going through, and you'll see a net increase of 45% in less than 6 months. We did that for the guys over at General Electric or Susie's Hamburger Shop or whatever, and we'll go ahead and show you exactly how we did that in our presentation next Thursday at 2:00. Does that work for you? So it all goes, for the detective, it goes to the bottom line, the numbers, the facts, and because the detective's worst fear is making a mistake, being wrong. So when the detective tries to go out and probably build a rally support around, it's going to be, they're talking about, connect rates of 5%, and I think for me that's a really good place for me to go with detective, because if you get into a little conversation with someone, say, what kind of connection rates are you getting right now? Industry standard 2%, 3%. Well, for the last few projects we did, we were able to improve the data, the inputs going into the system, where we were achieving connection rates of 6%, and so since we consistently convert 25% of our calls to net new meetings, you can do the math on that. That's a huge improvement. So, I've taken enough of your time today. This was a call to get a meeting set up. Why don't we set it up for next Thursday at 3 p.m. We'll pick it up from here, and I'll show you exactly, how this would work for your team.
Great. So we've got the detective, we did the counselor, entertainer, and the fighter. Tell me about the impact this has had on your life, because you've spent a fair amount of time yourself cold calling. I mean, it's obvious from your chops. You're definitely you've got them right now. So how has this impacted you in your life?
It's been great, and I honestly haven't been at this practice for very long. It's been less than a year that I hooked up with the guys at Southwestern and started studying this. and folding it into my day-to-day. It's challenging, like everything else. It's hard to just say this is how I'm going to do it, but taking baby steps, like those little things, I've gotten to the point where I have it woven into my fabric that I know if somebody says what, I really enjoy it, because I know that whatever you do, give them decisions. I mean, give them options. I mean, give them options. You want to do it this way or that way? Is this better for you, or is that better for you? Because the fighter wants to have control. So kind of incrementally, it's really improved my game, because it's really boosted my confidence, because I don't always feel like I'm trying the same thing that everyone else is doing. I'm not too concerned about intonation and modulation, or what's the easy way to say it, not being so focused on I'm a professional and I have some ability to Jedi mind trick people to do things. It's helped me be more understanding and calm and relaxed on the phone, thinking, well, this is going to be my strategy and I'm going to get good at it. So if it doesn't work, at least I know I'm improving myself. And the answer to your question is there's been a net improvement. I mean, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I don't think that it would be too far off if, I was converting conversations at about, 30%, 33%, something like that. I mean, one in three calls, or somewhere between 25 and 30%, which I think is a pretty good conversion. I mean, let's not get carried away. Sometimes I go 25 calls without setting an appointment, right? And then sometimes they come together. But this has definitely improved that ability to have more relaxed conversations. Even getting past the opening of somebody saying, "Hey, what is this? What is this? What is this about?" Said, "Hey, I just called. Wanted to share a couple of things that are working for other clients. Is now a good time, or should I give you a call back this afternoon?" And again, just my whole thing is remember to ask some questions. You know what I mean? And give the fighters some choices, and then maybe they'll say, "Yeah, I'm super busy right now. This afternoon works better." And it's always so much nicer to call somebody back when you can genuinely say they were expecting your call, right? So you schedule a call back, you call them back in the afternoon. "Hey, I caught you earlier. You're way too busy. Did you get that fire put out?" You know?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, yeah, this is great. This is wonderful. So it's helped me dramatically, and I think I could probably say from a percentage game, it's probably increased my productivity probably about 30 to 40%, somewhere in there. I think would be realistic, and that's actually hit the bottom line of my wallet too, in incentives and compensation and things like that. So even the money that I'm putting towards my education and coaching with Southwestern Consulting has paid off dramatically, and this is all a result of that.
And I just want to put this in context because some of you might be familiar with one of the guys that Shawn works for, which is Rex Biberston. And I can't tell you what episode he did, but he put on a class for us on cold calling himself. And so he's somebody that I respect, that has quite the cold calling chops. And the fact that you were able to take what he knows and then increase that by another 20 to 30% is incredible.
Yeah. No, it's being over at the sales developers, it's a lot of fun because Rex is over there, and Ryan Reisert's over there, the CEO, and talk about a couple of great fellows that are just 100% open up doors. SDR. You see Ryan with his "I love SDR" hats on. It's
Yeah.
a great thing, and sometimes I think it's not fair. It's not fair. I get to really practice these skills because I have the opportunity to have 30 or 40 conversations a day. Why? Because Rex is busy with his team putting all the data together. The scripts are wonderful, and you step into a machine where you just press go, and people start answering the phone, and you're focused on that. Which talking about the mindset, always talking about mindset of SDRs getting burnt out, and it's a hard job. And of course, it's a hard job if you're spending your time calling people that aren't answering the phone, or you're talking to gatekeepers and things like that. So sometimes I feel like it's a different level in the context of, wow, everybody would do so much better if they had the opportunity to have 25 or 30 conversations or 40 conversations a day. You could really polish these skills and polish your scripts and things. So it's great. It's great working with those guys. They're wonderful.
It's amazing. A great person. We've got a new SDR that I just recommended I just had her watch Ryan's podcast with us where he talked about his bucketing system. So two great guests. You're in really good company there. Shawn, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. If anybody's got questions they want to reach out, can they find you?
You can reach me. I am Shawn, SHAWN, at The Sales Developers, and you can find me that way on LinkedIn as well. I run a little 5 by noon, little 1-minute tip thing every morning on LinkedIn too, giving a little tidbit of what I think is working for me. I try to share that with the world every morning.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Shawn.
Collin, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.